Cool. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back. This is UFC 261, not 262 like I was about to say. Welcome back to the Evan Haynes MMA show, joined by the co-host, Eric LaRochelle.
What's up, everyone? Good to be back. Number 3.
And this is a very special event. This will be the first event with live fans in over a year. This will be held in Jacksonville, Florida, to a sold-out crowd, I believe, of 15,000 people. The early prelims will start at 4:45 Texas time, main card going off at 9 p.m. We're just going to cover the main card as usual, no point. So we'll just jump right in. Well, first, actually, let's not jump right in here. LaRochelle, I want to get your opinion. Ben Askren, Jake Paul. Jake Paul, first round knockout. Questionable refereeing skills, but just give me your take on that.
As far as the 1.5 million people that paid to see that shit, I'd be complaining you want your money back. First of all, the whole thing probably took about 5 hours, and 4.5 hours was just a damn concert and commentary and ads. Because the fight itself took around 30 seconds. It was a total waste of time. There was more clout chasing for Jake Paul to get into the boxing scene, which, in my mind, it's losing the integrity of the sport itself. Having these YouTube guys come on and get these pay-per-view draws to a sport, it's diminishing the respect, if any, that boxing has left. And for what happened with Askren, I'm going to go out on a limb. That fight seemed so staged. It didn't even look like that solid of a punch. And if you've seen Askren fight in the UFC with, mind you, way smaller gloves, aside from the flying knee from hell that Masvidal hit him with that would have knocked out Thanos, he has a granite chin and he can take a damn punch. So I think he went down easy, quick, got right back up. And if you see him walking out of the stage, he had a damn smile on his face. And that smile came with $1 million fucking dollars, more money than he's ever made in the UFC. So it was a good publicity stunt, and it was a spectacle of an entertainment, more or less a concert or a reality show, rather than actual competitive fighting. And that's my take.
Yeah, I mean, you got fucking drunk and coked out Oscar De La Hoya on the fucking commentary. He's babbling nonsense the whole time. Snoop Dogg talking shit. But I think it's time that Jake Paul fights someone who has some degree of boxing skill. You can't keep putting people in there that are just going to take a one right hand and get knocked out. This is absurd. So I'd like to see him fight someone that's boxed before. And I've seen reports that he is getting matched up with Tyson Fury's younger brother, who is a professional boxer. He's a middleweight, and I would love to see that fight because I think Jake Paul is going to get his ass kicked.
Yeah, well, finally. You also heard what he said, what he tweeted out or put on Instagram. Picked the wrong guy, and he said, I'm going to call out Nate Diaz and I would KO him in 3 rounds. And I think if the 95% of the world was against him now or before the Askren fight, it'd be 100% of the world is against him for the Diaz fight. And everyone knows he would get his ass kicked. Diaz is not 40 years old. He was never an Olympic wrestler. He started out with boxing and jiu-jitsu and is hella good at it. So, I mean, talk about pay-per-view buys, put it whatever promotion they were doing that event in, and people are going to tune in to see that kid get his ass kicked and what everyone's hoping to see in the first place.
Yeah, and then just some quick news that I saw today scrolling through my Twitter feed for you. Tyron Woodley was released by the UFC today. And then Israel Adesanya is scheduled to fight Marvin Vettori July 12th at whatever UFC main event that'll be. So that's
probably 263. That's a month or two after Oliveira and Chandler, which is in May.
So that'll be for the middleweight title. And then Dana White came out and said, we'll get into it more. Colby Covington will get the winner of our main event. And then Francis Ngannou will fight Derek Lewis because John Jones is asking for too much money, according to Dana White. So
shocker.
Look forward to that coming around. So with that, we'll get in to start off the main card. We have a light heavyweight bout. We got Anthony Smith versus Jimmy Crute. LaRochelle, if you want to take it away.
All right. I don't know if anyone has seen this Jimmy Crute guy, but he has burst onto the scene in spectacular fashion. He's the minus 200 favorite. He's 25 years old. He's from Australia. I don't know what camp he trains out of, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was with the Whitaker team out in that neck of the woods. He's won 4 out of his last 5 in the UFC, KO'd Sam Alvey, submitted Paul Craig. So bursting onto the scene, he's got a pretty good resume, I would say.
Yeah, and his only loss was to Misha Kirkunov, submitted in the first round by a Peruvian necktie, which is incredible because I don't even know what that is. And Jimmy Crute's a wrestler. So I don't really count that as a loss. I bet he just got tangled up. He's fighting Anthony Smith, who has 34 wins, 16 losses, who is kind of at that stage of the career where I think Dana's just making him the gatekeeper in the light heavyweight division. You have to get past Anthony Smith if you want to go above. His last 5 fights, lost to John Jones, beat Gustafsson, knocked out by Glover Teixeira, lost a unanimous decision to Rakic, and then he submitted Devin Clark in November by triangle choke. So, for this fight, I wouldn't really bet on either one of these. I think the main storyline is going to be, does Jimmy Crute take that next step to get closer to the light heavyweight belt? Or does Anthony Smith prove that he still deserves to stick around?
Based on your first point, that has been a reoccurring coined term with these podcasts we've been doing, is a gatekeeper fighter. And it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. You got a guy like Anthony Smith who, lost 3 out of his last 5, but he's always been in that top 10 mixed range. Whether it's a little over or under 500, his career, he's facing tough competition night in and night out. What surprises me and what impresses me about Jimmy Crute, I was looking at some statistics. He's a very well-rounded, balanced fighter, and here's some numbers to back it up. He averages 4.4 significant strikes landed per minute with a 63% accuracy, which is solid and above average. On top of that, he averages 4.4 takedowns per fight with a 75% accuracy. His submissions and his knockouts, his wins are going like hand in hand. He's inconsistent with how he's finishing, but that means he's well-rounded and he's not going to many decisions. And what I've seen from him, he's able to mix it up. And at the end of the day, that's what this sport's all about. And he's a young, hungry guy that I see moving forward in the light heavyweight division.
Yeah, and I want to point out too, Anthony Smith, he wouldn't say it. Some people wouldn't say it. Maybe it's a hot take, but in his past few fights, his ground game has looked abysmal. And I know me saying this, even though he got a submission his last fight against Devin Clark, but I remember the Glover Teixeira fight. Glover put him on his ass and didn't let him up. And then the Rakic fight literally was a crotch sniffing match. Ratchet just sat on him the whole time. And then he submitted Devin Clark, but Devin Clark was honestly so lost on the ground. And I know Jimmy Crute has a really good ground game, so I'm going to give him the edge there. And then I'm going to give Crute the edge, honestly, with the stand-up. Watching Anthony Smith's last few fights, he's had some wars. And when I say this, I mean, like, he's taken some heavy damage, especially in that Glover Teixeira fight. That could have been stopped in the 3rd round, but they let it play out all the way into the very end of the 5th before they called it. So with this one, I wouldn't touch anything on it. If you want, I would put money on Crute. I don't see really any way Anthony Smith gets this done. Again, Crute's one loss is by a Peruvian necktie, which I assume is a very complex submission. So I don't think
I'll give a little in depth to that because I know what it is. It's a modified guillotine choke. When a guy takes you down and you wrap his arms, your arms around his neck when you're going to the ground, you use a top arm over and you take that same side leg and that goes over his back. So it's like you're pinching these 2 arms together and connecting them. It's like a front rear naked choke, but the leg that secures the back ensures that they can't get out. And it works a lot better with gis and traditional jiu-jitsu, but it's a super rare submission in the UFC. So if someone lands it, they for sure know what the hell they're doing. So you can't be too critical on Crute's ground game because of that. That's a high level move for sure.
Yeah, and I'm looking through Anthony Smith, and he is not secured a win by guillotine. Um, so with that being said, I don't think Anthony Smith is going to be able to pull off a submission from his back. I think Jimmy Cruz is too smart for that. So that's where we stand on that one. Moving on, the next one, we got a middleweight bout. We got Uriah Hall versus Chris Weidman.
Both of these guys, this fight is a blast from the past. You have this fight maybe 5 years ago when both these guys were finishing in their respective own in spectacular fashion. Might have been a more interesting fight and not the second one on the main card. This would have been a co-main event or a main event at the time, maybe when Weidman was champion. To break it down, they're both 36 years old. They're both around 6'2". Weidman has a 78-inch reach. I think Hall has a 79. Weidman's 15-5. He's won 2 out of his last 5 in the UFC. And his most recent was unanimous against Akhmedov. We both know what these guys bring to the table, but Father Time is something we can't predict and what it has affected on their skill sets. So there's a big question, and that's why I think both these guys. I know Weidman's minus 115, and I think Hall's minus 160 or something. It's
like a pick 'em, I think. Yeah,
it's a pick 'em for sure.
Yeah. So Chris Weidman's 2-4 over his last 6 bouts. He's lost to Luke Rockhold, Yoel Romero, Jajard Musasi. He's beat Gastelum. He lost to Dominic Reyes, and then he beat Akhmedov. With Uriah Hall, he's riding a 3-fight win streak. However, it's not against the best competition. You win against Bevan Lewis, KO, a split decision win against Antonio Carlos, and then a 4th-round knockout of Anderson Silva, who absolutely has looked like shit for the past 5 years. Chris Weidman has said in recent interviews that he wants to challenge for the belt, and he thinks his wrestling style would give Izzy problems, especially after watching that Jan Blachowicz fight. So, like you said, Father Time, they're both like 36 years old. Uriah Hall definitely had it's a classic matchup of grappler versus striker here. You got Uriah Hall with amazing power in those hands, and then you got a classic American wrestler in Chris Weidman.
Yeah. And if you look at it on paper, that's probably one of, if the few ways that Weidman can win this bout. All right. Uriah Hall does have superior power striking with knockout ability. We've all seen that. He might have had the most vicious knockout ever on The Ultimate Fighter, where he almost killed that guy named Adam. I can't even remember his last name, and he probably doesn't either. His CTE is so bad. But in the losses that Hall has had, he's been outworked and out wrestled against competent opponents, guys who have average wrestling, but just have that gas tank and that chin that can apply the pressure and weather the storm in those early rounds. This is Weidman's strong suit, his wrestling, right? He has competent boxing and elite wrestling and grappling. And back in the day, you saw that when he went toe to toe against Machida, Belfort, Anderson Silva twice. So if he's really trying to make another title run here, this is the guy he's going to have to beat. He's going to have to survive that early weather storm on the stand up, get it to the mat, and wear and tear on Hall. I think that's his key to victory.
Yeah, and I just found this out. They have fought before. Uriah Hall and Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman defeated him by 1st-round knockout in Ring of Combat, September 24th, 2010. So, I mean, it really doesn't mean much. It's 11 years ago. And it's still surprising, though, that he got a knockout on him, which is kind of interesting. I think with this one, I like Chris Weidman. I think it's just a little biased just because I've been hearing him in the news a lot talk about it, how he wants to make a challenge. But I do think I think he'll just get Uriah Hall to the ground and just keep it that way, because there's no way he's going to stand there and bang with Uriah Hall.
And the numbers are very close, like we were saying. It's a who's pick 'em. If there's an over-under on the rounds, I would definitely take the over, because the only chance Hall has a finishing ability, I think, in his past or in the very early stages of a fight. And even though it's a 3-round fight, like I said before, you don't know if these skill changes have adapted to their careers with their age and what they're still able to do. To be honest, it's a good question.
Yeah. So with that, I'm gonna go with Weidman on that one. And now let's get after it with these 3 title fights. Dana had to do it to him with the first event in person. He has to put 3 title fights on there to get that crowd. First up, we have none other than Valentina Shevchenko versus Jessica Andrade for the women's flyweight title.
Whew, Shevchenko coming out as a very strong, the biggest spread, minus 475 favorite. And there is a reason because it. She is 20-3. She's won 5 out of her last 5 fights, and they were all title defenses. Some notable names: Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Jessica Ai, Liz Carmouche, Caitlin Chukagian, and Jennifer Maia. She's 5'5", 125 pounds, as y'all know. She's 33 years old, which, as we've seen in the past with men and women, almost 30 to 35 is when guys and girls seem to be in their actual prime. So she is locked in, and I think ready to go for this one.
Yeah, and with this one, it's notable to point out 2 of Shevchenko's losses are to Amanda Nunes, going up in weight, and we'll talk about that later after we do this. With Jessica Andrade, my only question with her, huge question, is this isn't her normal weight class. I was also watching the weigh-ins. She's only 5'2". She is a straw weight. And moving up into the flyweights, she's tiny compared to Shevchenko, and she's lost to Weili Zhang, who knocked her out, and Rose Namajunas in a split decision, who are both challenging for the strawweight title right after them, which is 10 pounds less. So she's definitely going to have the size disadvantage, and the only thing that she brings is everyone says how she has amazing power. Well, the problem is she's fighting Valentina Shevchenko.
Valentina. Yeah, her sister. Oh my God. Side note, her sister is drop dead gorgeous, and they train together, which is even more amazing. But yeah, it's a good point, right? Andrade is moving up in a weight class, and the prior fights we've seen her in, wins or losses, if she could get that physical dominance on someone, grab a hold of him, slam that, one of the most nasty slams I've ever seen against Rose Namajunas.
Yes.
That played a big factor into her game on top of the striking. But that size differential, right? She's moving up a weight class, going against a champion who prior to that fought up another weight class and now came back and found her sweet spot. I don't think Andrade is going to have the capabilities to just outmuscle her opponent when it gets in tight. And she's going against the most lethal flyweight, 125. Is that correct? Yeah, flyweight that probably the UFC's ever seen for this weight class as of now. It's a tough fight for Andrade, and the way I see it, she's had trouble with technical strikers who can handle power, and that is Valentina to a T. And amongst that, that's not. And you get to these elite level fighters, right? And you talk about the striking, you talk about the grappling, but the elite of the elite, Shevchenko's fight IQ is second to none. She's very aware of her surroundings at all times. She rarely makes mistakes or is caught off guard. And it's precision power with a competent ground game, right? She trains with her sister Antonina, who just had a fight, I think, last month against Ariana Lipski. But I thought Lipski was going to win that fight, but Shevchenko comes in and just dominates on the feet and on the ground, just outclassed. So her IQ and her training partners are second to none.
Yeah, I mean, ladies and gentlemen, I won't beat around the bush, but this should be an easy win for Shevchenko, in my opinion. What about you?
No, 100%. Even though it's a minus 475, yeah, I would hit the button on this. I don't see a way that, I mean, every UFC fight, right, there's a puncher's chance. May as well be the same thing in boxing. But the way Andrade, her skill set, it's not even in the same tier. I think Shevchenko's just raked out the whole division, and they're just scrapping to find her opponent because she rarely gets hurt, and she can fight on short notice relatively for being a title holder.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, 2 of her 3 losses are to Amanda Nunes. And Larshel, I want to ask you this question. They've already had the fight twice. Amanda Nunes has won twice. Like you said, Shevchenko's cleaned out the division. Nunes has cleaned out her division. If Shevchenko wins, what do you do with her? Do you schedule a third Nunes Shevchenko fight, knowing that she's already lost the first 2?
You have to. You have to at this point, because in Dana White's eyes, there's no other contender that's relatively close that has been moving up like a Chimenev or a Zabit. There's no one that's breaking through the ranks in such a high fashion that you're like, wait a second, this guy or girl might be ready for a title fight very soon. Like you said, Nunes and Shevchenko have both cleared out their divisions, and these are one of those super fights you need to start talking about. And if this fight goes well for Shevchenko and she's healthy, God forbid, that could be on the same card as Ngannou or Lewis, and that could be one of those super cards, you know. So yeah, I for sure think they have to fight after Shevchenko. In my opinion, just dismantles Andrade.
Yeah, I mean they're completely different skill sets. The only thing that Shevchenko has against her going into a Nunes fight is Nunes has considerable size. Now I also throw this question at you: would you be interested in a Shevchenko versus Rose, the winner of the Rose versus Zhang Weili fight, going down? But because I don't know if she could make that weight, and I'm assuming Zhang or Rose wouldn't go up in weight.
No, I don't really see that panning out, because if you look at Shevchenko in the past, she fought up a weight class, right? And she took a toll on moving down. And I think this is such a perfect weight for her. At the end of the day, it's why risk it? Why would you go down and try to get a belt in the third division? Some of the best still haven't even done that. So I think she would have too much to lose to move down and try to compete for that belt as well.
So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that's a clear-cut lock. Valentina Shevchenko. I know the odds are insane. If you want to lower them, I would take her by decision. I don't think she knocks Jessica Andrade out or submits her, but I think she easily outclasses her. So moving on to the co-main event, we have Rose Namajunas challenging Zhang Weili for the women's strawweight title.
Ladies and gentlemen, this co-main event, strawweight title, is brought to you by none other than Corona Rita Extra. Whether you're on the beach or on the surf or in a podcast talking about UFC, Corona Rita Extra, it's for you. Paid and programmed. Here we go. All right. Thug Rose Namajunas, plus 175, 10-4 in the UFC, won 4 out of her last 5. Notable names: Michelle Watterson, Joanna Jacek twice, and we were just talking about Jessica Andrade, 5'5", 115 pounds, 28 years old, and will have a 2-inch reach advantage. Let's hear your thoughts, Evan.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to beat around the bush here. Zhang Weili is my woman. This is my favorite women's UFC fighter. She started off her career with a loss, and she is now on a 20-fight win streak. She's 20-1 after starting off her career loss. Last year, had one of the most epic UFC fights, male or woman, either, in a 5-round barn burner of a fight with Joanna Jędrzejczyk, where she suffered a huge hematoma and her face was completely deformed. If I had to break this fight down, I would say Zhang is a Mexican boxer. If you know what Mexican boxing looks like, they like to get in there and throw combinations. Rose is more of the Muhammad Ali, Floyd Mayweather. She's going to stick to the outside. She's going to try to touch you up. And Rose has said it herself. Her goal is to try and submit you. So the interesting thing, Larshel, is we have not seen a lot of jiu-jitsu out of Zhang Weili. We don't know what she looks like off her back. And Rose has said that's a considerable part of her game plan, is to try and get the game on the ground.
Well, it is, and she doesn't even need to alliterate that to the fans. Diehard Rose fans, and I've watched her for a long time since The Ultimate Fighter, know that that is part of her game plan if she can't finish it on the feet. I'm just gonna, because this is not another one of those pick'ems, right? You're gonna have to dive in deep to figure out who may or may not have the advantage, and then you leave it up to the viewers to see whom they may want to put their money on. Zhang Weili, her bread and butter is speed and power. It's second to none. the amount of volume with her strikes is imperative to her game plan. And as you saw, yeah, in that Joanna fight, I mean, that might have been in contention with the Holloway Qatar fight with how many significant strikes were thrown and landed. It was an absolute war. Definitely in contention for fight of the year. And then you look at Rose Namajunas. Her bread and butter is precision striking mixed with phenomenal grappling abilities, and that's to her advantage. So it's not a classic wrestler striker matchup here. Both of these women are elite in regards to their striking. Rose does have better striking accuracy and defense, and I think she's a little bit taller. Like I said, a 2-inch reach advantage that may come into play when you have two elite strikers, fighting for the belt. And like I said, Weili's striking volume is definitely to her advantage. And then the only other aspect, because I'm trying to compare the two, right? Because this is staged. This is perfect timing. Both of them are in the prime of their careers. Okay, Weili's last fight was with Joanna, right? It was a brutal war, 5 rounds. I think it was unanimous, but either way, she took a lot of damage. It took a lot of time to recover. Look at the other side of the book. Look how Rose handled Joanna twice, destroyed her. It wasn't even competitive. So I think that has a lot to do with the coaching aspect. Maybe Rose just, her fight IQ is greater. She comes into each fight with a better game plan. And I think she's a lot harder to prepare for than someone like Weili, who it's the striking volume in your face all 5 rounds. But like you said earlier, we haven't seen her ground game.
Yeah, and I'll just rattle off some stats for you, ladies and gentlemen. This might even be better than the main event because we have Zhang Weili, who lands 6.38 significant strikes per minute. So basically a significant strike every 10 seconds. Then on the other side, we got Rose, who lands 4.13. That's a combined 10 significant strikes a minute. And both their defenses are kind of bad on the stand-up. Zhang Weili's 53%, Rose is 60%. So they take damage. And if you watch their fights, Rose has had some damage on her face, and the same with Zhang. Zhang's takedown defense is 100%, but she's never faced anyone with the ground skills that Rose has. So this is going to be a really interesting fight, and I'm really interested to see if Rose does implement the ground game and how fast she does that, because Zhang Weili, her goal is to get on the inside and just suffocate you with just combinations on combinations. With this, though, it's going to be a very close fight, ladies and gentlemen. If you want some money, this is a perfect play to put it on the dog. This is a perfect play with Rose. She has a very good chance of winning this fight, but I have to ride with my woman, Zhang Weili. Lauer Show.
I'm going Thug Rose Namajunas. And like you said, like we both said, it's a pick 'em fight, right? We had to dive deep into the techniques, skill sets, coachings, all the above, just to try to see who had an edge on either one of them. A little too close for me to call. I know, Evan, you're going on Weili. For Rose at the plus 175, I would take it. I wouldn't drop your whole earnings on it, but if you got a good 20 to 40 to spend, that'd be the one I'm hitting.
Yeah, this is an excellent underdog to take. Rose also, an end note, Rose did make this a personal fight. She said better dead than red, alluding to Zhang being from China and Rose being from Lithuania. Her grandmother's still there, an ex-Soviet bloc country. So this is a personal fight for both of them. So we'll see how it turns out, but ladies and gentlemen, you're not going to want to miss that fight. Agreed. Now, let's get to it, baby. The welterweight title is on the line. We have Jorge Gamebred Masvidal versus Kamaru, the Nigerian Nightmare Usman. Whew.
This fight, ladies and gentlemen, is brought to you by none other than Michelob Ultra, one of the greatest beers known to man. Whether you're riding a bicycle and you're thinking you on a commercial, or you're at a darty with your boys getting ready for the tailgate, Michelob Ultra is the beer for you. Dropping right into it, Kamaru, the Nigerian Nightmare Usman, minus 435. He's even a bigger favorite than he was in the first match when Masvidal had 6 days notice. 18-1, won 5 out of his last 5, all title defenses. Woodley, Covington, Masvidal, Burns, 6'1", 170, 33 years old, damn near as close, the same as Shevchenko. He is in the prime of his career. Let's dive into it.
Yeah, let's dive into it. Let's just start off with that. He only had 6 days notice, and it was in Abu Dhabi too during COVID. So he had to fly across the world, do a weight cut, and fight against the number 3 pound for pound best fighter ranked by UFC. So, and it was a typical what we would think. But in Masvidal's own words, Usman never hurt him in that fight. Never hurt him once. I'm really excited for this because I think a full camp is going to do wonders for this. And the question is, if Masvidal stuffs those takedowns, what's going to happen? Because this sounds a lot like what we were talking about with the Stipe Francis, because I was all over that Francis was not going to stuff those takedowns. And my co-host, Eric LaRochelle, called it perfectly right on the button. He said Francis was going to stuff those takedowns, and look what happened.
Yeah, and if that fight not even a month ago wasn't a blueprint for Jorge Masvidal, who game bred. Think about that nickname, man. This guy has, again, elite IQ. He's got a great coaching staff around him. And even as dominant as a fight as that first one was, you look at Masvidal, and he never really, in his facial expression, seemed out of it. He was getting beat, he was getting dominated, but it was almost looked like even when he was against the cage, he was taking mental notes. Like, okay, I'm definitely going to see this motherfucker again. This is what I'm going to do here. This is what I'm going to do here. Give me some more cardio and endurance, and I think this fight's going to change. But again, I'm going to take the side of Usman, right? He's strong. It's one of the strongest, most technical, prolific strikers with dominant wrestling. I hate to say it because he reminds me of George St. Pierre, who is my all-time favorite fighter in the UFC, will be till the day I die. But if we're looking at devil's advocate here, Usman's only weakness, right, is what we saw in the first round of the Burns fight when he takes a few minutes, try to gauge that distance. Again, he was fighting a teammate, so maybe he was a bit hesitant, but either way, Burns puts the hands on him, drops him. He absorbed some heavy shots in that first round. Unfortunately, Burns was just not able to capitalize. And with a guy like Usman, you can't let him hang around because he's the type that gets stronger as the rounds go on.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought the Burns fight up because I was about to bring that up, saying, look what Burns did to Usman in the first round. He touched him up. He scored a knockdown against Usman, which is insane because nobody, even Colby Covington, didn't score a knockdown in their 5-round fight. But Burns, being not a rookie, I would say, but being that was the first time where he had all the light on him, he ran out of his cardio. Masvidal is too much of a veteran to do that. He's already fought him once, and he knows. I give Masvidal easy has the advantage on the feet. And I'm so glad you brought up the Burns fight because I think that's a perfect model that Masvidal needs to look at, which is Usman heats up as the rounds go. But in the first round, if I can touch him up and get in there, then he's going to start shooting on me. And then if I can stuff that takedown, that's when Masvidal is going to really get that fight going his way.
And if Gamebred wasn't Masvidal's nickname, it might as well be the Bull Shark, because when he lands strikes and he senses blood in the water, he is one of the most instinctual killers there is on the UFC roster as a whole. He, like you said, he's way too experienced, and it's in Jacksonville, Florida, right? They're both from Florida. But the thing is, even though Masvidal's the challenger, he's going to have more fans in the stands. I think we talked about this before with the prelude to Burns and Usman in the first place, because we saw that potential matchup coming up with Masvidal. I think Masvidal has the crowd behind him. I don't know why, and I think we've talked about it before, but people want to see Usman lose. You know, he might be a little arrogant. If so facto, he's an elite fighter, and he's one of the best welterweights to ever do it. There's no doubt about that. Masvidal, one of his only chances might be, like we've said, is to catch him in the early rounds and hurt him enough, even if he doesn't finish him, to keep putting on the pressure and not have Usman backing him up the entire time. And it's not even takedowns, whether it's the clinch and just applying the pressure and sapping that energy out of Masvidal.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one because I think, especially with him only having 6 days notice last time, he lasted 5 rounds in there. He lasted a 25-minute fight. So the cardio is not the issue at all. And the cardio is only going to improve with a full 6-week camp dedicated to this. Now, let me walk you through a crazy scenario, La Rochelle, that I think you will love because Dana, in my opinion, Dana is rooting for Masvidal because hear me out. Masvidal has the baddest motherfucker belt. He wins this fight. He gets the welterweight belt. Nate Diaz beats Leon Edwards. Then Diaz challenges for both belts, the baddest motherfucker, the welterweight belt. Then if Nate Diaz wins that and McGregor somehow captures the lightweight belt, that would set up a 3-belt fight between Nathan Diaz and Conor McGregor.
An undisputed Ghidorah in terms of Godzilla belt that no one's ever heard of. 2 belts at once is hard enough to come by, right? No, but that scenario, I didn't even think about that. That incites some excitement in me. That's for damn sure. And it's not too far-fetched when you think about it. Masvidal definitely has a puncher's chance in this fight, although the odds are way stacked against him, I think. And then, goddamn, that next month, Leon Edwards and Nate Diaz. That's something we also have to talk about. And then, like you said, McGregor, he comes up and it's a trifecta. We could be in the midst of an F5 tornado with a fucking hurricane and a global ending pandemic. Fuck Corona for this UFC ultimate event that could be in the near future.
Yeah, and let me just say something. The odds, whoever made these odds, this is absurd. You should be ashamed of yourself. Kamaru Usman is almost a 5-1 favorite somehow. Like that's close to Amanda Nunes numbers here. That you're basically saying he's a lock, which is far from it. I'm going to go out there right now and say it. Get your checkbook, ladies and gentlemen, and write down Jorge Gamebred Masvidal money line right now. I think Masvidal, now it might be just the dog inside me rooting for the dog, but I think Masvidal wins this fight. Especially you have to consider if Masvidal loses this fight, where does he go? Where does he go?
Very fair point. Shoot, those numbers are tough, but in all the fights I've seen Usman in, I've only seen a rare glimpse of a weakness. And as much as I hate to say it, and I don't bet against these spreads that are as heavy as these. But if you were to pick one, I'm gonna be devil's advocate again. I'd pick Kamaru Usman. I think he's just too much to handle, and there's such a small sweet spot, right? To get him down. It's like hitting the perfect drive or what have you, because none of us are pros around here. It's very hard. The stars have to be aligned, but there is wishful thinking. But from a spectator and a realist, I would pick Usman in this fight.
Yeah, and those odds are insane. And I would say if you were gonna, I think the best bet you can make on this is Usman by decision. I don't think Usman submits him. I don't think Usman knocks him out. I think this could be another easy 50-45 Usman, and I bet you could get the decision around -130, which is a very, very safe bet because he's not going to knock Masvidal out. And he basically sat on him for 20 minutes last time, and Masvidal was never in danger of getting submitted. So I don't see him pulling out. I don't see him finishing Masvidal.
No, absolutely. I don't. Yeah, whatever the props are, submit it, submission, knockout, decision. Take decision if you're going to go on top of the -435. There's Jorge, yeah, in that first fight on 6 days' notice, never seemed in trouble of getting finished. He was just getting dominated. So I think that's a safe bet. Where do we go from here?
Well, let's play the game as we always have. We will go to the welterweight here. So Dana's already said Colby's next in line for the title. So let's say Usman wins. So Usman will fight Colby. At number 2, you have Gilbert Burns. And then at 3, you have Leon Edwards, who's about to fight Nathan Diaz. 4 is Masvidal, and 5's Wonder Boy. What would you do with Gilbert Burns and then the winner of the Leon Edwards Nathan Diaz fight?
Gilbert Burns, I think, depending on how quick, if Usman wins, gets in line to fight Colby, you get him another title shot, maybe, or Gilbert, based off the rankings, they could schedule, a main card fight with him and Wonder Boy. I think that'd be an intriguing matchup with how Wonder Boy uses his distance. Even at an older age, that could produce major problems for Burns, just the way he fights. And then Edwards, even though I'm not rooting for him, if Edwards does beat Nate Diaz, I think he's top of the line after Colby.
He has to be. It'd be a 9-fight win streak. We've talked about this, ladies and gentlemen, on this podcast specifically before. The welterweight division is the slowest moving division in the UFC. All those top 5 guys refuse to fight each other, and they all want that title fight. That's why it's so logjam, because those are killers. You have Usman champ, Colby 1, Gilbert 2, Leon 3, Masvidal 4, and Wonder Boy 5.
And Chimaev, who's coming back.
Khamzat just broke the rankings. He's 15th now in the welterweight division. I like that. Now let's see that game. So you have Khamzat coming back. Who would you like to see him fight? Some names: Robbie Lawler's 14, Bilal's 13, Damian Maia's 8, Chiesa's 7, Vicente's 6.
I think Khamzat, just because the reign that he's been on, I give him a 7 or a 6. I would rather see Chiesa, just because Chimaev does have that dominant style, Dagestan Russian grappling sort of style, but Michael Chiesa has some of the most underrated jiu-jitsu and grappling skills in the UFC, not just the welterweight division.
Submission skills.
Crazy submissions, dude.
Skills.
He's like a slug once he gets attached to you. That'd be the fight I want to see, and it wouldn't be maybe the most spectacular fight anyone's seen, but it's something that would play a definitive role in ranking the top 10 at that point. Whether Chiesa wins, but beating a guy like Chimaev, even though he's 15, people already know, and I'm no UFC matchmaker, but they're gonna know that if Chiesa wins, he's right up there in that top 5 mix as well.
Now we'll flip it around. If Masvidal wins this fight, do you give him a trilogy with Usman, or do you make the grudge match Colby Covington versus Jorge Masvidal? Because they fucking hate each other.
Yeah, that's a flip of the coin, because everyone loves rubber matches, and because how rare they are. I mean, look at what Conor did with Dustin Poirier, right? Dustin won, and now they've each won one, and Dustin is in line to have a title defense, right? But yeah, he's choosing the money fight, let's be honest, and what the people want to fucking see, and that's a trilogy fight with him and Conor McGregor, mainly because Dustin got knocked out the first one. That's the first time Conor's been knocked out on the second one. And so, I mean, me as a fight fan as well, I'd rather see Dustin and Conor 3 before Dustin goes on his title reign, which I'm sure he will.
Yeah, I think with the welterweight division, you have to look at that. And then it would also be interesting because Israel Adesanya said he will never challenge for the welterweight belt as long as Usman still has the belt. Shout out JoJo. For all
you see him?
Yeah, baby.
Hey, JoJo's back in the mix, ladies and gents. I finally got this time. I got this boy to Houston. He's back in action, all neutered and ready to go. He's here. He's here for the long roll.
There you go. So, like I was saying, Israel said he would never challenge for the welterweight as long as Usman held the belt. However, if Usman lost the belt, he said he wouldn't be opposed to going down there, which could be interesting at some point in time.
That's a conversation for another podcast, I think. I don't want to dive in too deep there because there's too much speculation.
Too much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're about wrapped up here. Larshel, you have any last thoughts on the main card or the card overall?
No, not on the card. Well, yes, y'all should all tune in, place your bets where you see fit based off this podcast. But I'm gonna rope Evan into this one. All right, May 15th, UFC 262. I am marking my words. Whether we go to the event or whether Evan is here in Houston, we are going to do. We're either going to be at the event at the Toyota Center, or Evan will be in this household, and we're going to live stream a commentary and a pre-show based on the fights we're showing and the commentary as the fights go on as an alternate source of information that I'm sure y'all viewers would love to see.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen. So mark that down. That is not too far in the future. That is the next pay-per-view. With the lightweight title on the belt, Nathan Diaz is also fighting on it. Tony Ferguson is also fighting on it. You're not going to want to miss that. That'll be the first time the co-host and the host are in person together, which will just add the fireworks. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, signing off. Hope you good betting. Remember, bet safely.